You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
Welcome to the Talkin Texas Rangers podcast. I'm your host, as always, Larry Leese. In today's episode, we're diving into all the latest headlines from around Global I Feel. Before we do that, give us your thoughts on all the topics we covered in the comment section below, and let's keep the conversation going. And now on to our first topic. Despite the Rangers' denials, Kevin Pillar feels like a whistleblower, not a liar. What does Kevin Pillar have to gain by throwing shade at established veterans? Whenever you hear a negative quote from a former player, you have to take it with a grain of salt, especially a veteran player who was DFA'd by the club. So when utility man Kevin Pillar let his opinion be known about his time with the Rangers, he was met with a certain amount of skepticism and poo-pooed as sour grapes from a disgruntled ex-employee. But if you examine exactly what the newly retired 13-year vet said, and compare it with the product being delivered on the field this season, you should admit that there's some truth on both sides of the coin. Pillar, who was DFA'd by the Rangers on May 25th after spending the majority of his time with the organization rehabbing a back injury, had a lot to say about his days in a Ranger uniform. On foul territory, he said, quote, "When I got to the clubhouse in Texas, there was a lot of talent in there and a lot of individual stuff going on. A lot of guys doing their own things. You might not see people until the game. Your perception of a team can be a little different when you actually get into spring training and you're around the guys. It was a little bit different. Them coming off a World Series win a couple of years ago, that was the team I thought I was joining." There is no denying this year's version of the Rangers is a far different outfit from the version that won it all in 2023. The team was about as rock solid as you can get from a core standpoint. Any club that can do what they did on the road in hostile environments is something special. That group was locked in and completely on the same wavelength. This year's squad has had some stretches offensively that have screamed that they are still a little bit far from reaching the top of the mountain 2 years ago. If you are watching the same games night in and night out that we are, you'll admit there is not the same pep in their step. You'd have to be in the clubhouse every day to know the truth about what Pillar says about his team's leadership and cohesiveness, and he was, for spring training and then 2 months of the regular season. It might be foolish to knee-jerk and say that Pillar is just a journeyman with sour grapes over how his career ended in Arlington. This team has underperformed on offense this season and has been the group of Simeon, Seager, Garcia, Young, and Duran that has been the common denominator for both teams. It doesn't do Pillar any good to point the finger in their direction unless he believes what he is saying to be true. Something is different, and maybe he's just an honest whistleblower. The Rangers' best trade deadline asset just turned to dust right before their eyes. Tyler Mahle's injury throws a wrench in the Rangers' potential trade deadline plans. Tyler Mahle's 2025 season has been easily the biggest storyline for the Texas Rangers. From the 2.34 ERA, which would be top of the league, to the 56 strikeouts, the 30-year-old was shining to kick off his contract season. However, being relied on to the maximum, still shortly after being fully recovered from Tommy John surgery in 2023, Mahle was sidelined on June 15th with right shoulder fatigue. It only got worse when the team announced the injury would sideline him further, moving him to the 60-day IL. Besides missing him from the rotation, why is this such a big deal? Well, because he's perhaps the team's biggest trade chip in the midst of a disappointing season, and his injury will likely sideline him well past the July 31st trade deadline. At 42 and 44, the Rangers are 10 games out of first place in the American League West and facing a critical point in their season. They want to continue to be competitive and return to the postseason, but they also need to keep their options open. Due to his strong start, Mahle is easily among the team's top trade candidates, alongside outfielder Adolis Garcia and a plethora of veteran relievers. But his injury could change things. A trade is not impossible, as Mahle can still be dealt while sitting on the injured list, but due to an uneasy feeling of where Mahle is in his recovery, other than he likely won't be until August when he gets back on the mound, other teams might be inclined to look elsewhere. Given that Mahle was a rental, he wouldn't have drawn that big of a return, but for a Texas team with an ever-depleting farm system, those are still valuable pieces for the future. So no trade still does have positive news. In a perfect world, the Rangers start to turn around and close the gap either in the AL wildcard or AL West divisional race, and Mahle makes a return to the rotation to close out the regular season. But we don't live in a perfect world, and a lot of things would need to go right to make that happen. If the Rangers could find an appropriate trade piece for Mahle, his injury likely signals less work for Mahle, which would free them of Mahle's contract incentives, which would call Texas to pay the right-hander $1.5 million for throwing 140 innings this season. That would effectively help keep Texas below the luxury tax, which was a massive goal of Rangers ownership heading into the year. Excuse me. And on to our next topic. Rangers have managed to restore Patrick Corbin. Is it time to capitalize and trade him? The Rangers bought low on journeyman starter and are now in a position to sell much higher. For a guy whom the Rangers were able to get off the scrap heap for almost nothing, Patrick Corbin has been one of the most incredible stories this season. Chris Young signed the left-hander to a one-year, $1.1 million contract, and he's held his own in the fifth spot in the rotation. With DeGrom, he's been the only other starter who has made every scheduled start so far this season. He's delivered quality start after quality start, and it's fair to say that the organization has restored some value to a veteran pitcher who had to wonder if his career was over. Now the question becomes, should the Rangers flip their fixer-upper and see if they can sell high on Corbin while still throwing well? The Rangers would have to be realistic about what they would get for Corbin on the open market. Even a rejuvenated Patrick Corbin is far from a top-tier pitcher on the open market. Let's be real about a 35-year-old soft tossing lefty that is sporting a 4-7 record and a 4.26 ERA. But again, we're talking about a guy who's reliable and still crafty enough to get hitters out. His last start also showed that he's got heart, going 6 innings after giving up 3 earned runs early against the Baltimore Orioles. Corbin battled and ended up throwing a season-high 110 pitches before turning the game over to the bullpen following yet another quality start. So what could the Rangers potentially get for Corbin in a trade? The problem, with trying to flip Corbin is that all you are likely to get for him won't help the Rangers this season. He won't attract a quality bat, and there's no reason to trade him for another guy who will put up similar numbers unless someone is willing to part with a significant younger project that needs some fine-tuning. They can always look to get some cash considerations and future picks to a pitching star fringe contender. And if the Rangers are going to become sellers and have little interest in re-signing their reclamation project, they could put him on the market and see what the best offer is. Let me know what you think they should do to Patrick Corbin in the comments section below. And with that, our next topic, the curious case of Bruce Bochy has the team at a crossroads. Are Chris Young and the organization married to the future Hall of Fame manager no matter what? This is a subject that must be handled very delicately. To be clear, we are not advocating any of several routes the Rangers could go with their beloved future Hall of Fame skipper. This year, should the team continue to tread water and drift out of the playoff race. Bruce Bochy is a first-ballot iconic figure who has won 4 World Series championships. Only 6 other managers have won as many rings as Bochy. You may recognize the company he keeps. It's guys like Casey Single, Connie Mack, Joe Torre, Joe McCarthy, and Walter Alston. That's the end of the list in the entire history of America's great pastime. So Chris Young and the Rangers are going to handle Bochy with kid gloves, as there are a few different routes they could take should the Rangers slip out of contention completely. So right off the bat, could the Rangers fire Bochy mid-season? This is the most nuclear of all the options, considering that Bochy has never been fired, much less mid-season. He managed the Padres for a dozen seasons before moving up the West Coast, where he led the San Francisco Giants for 13 seasons, retiring from the Giants after the 2019 season. He then came out of retirement, signed a 3-year deal with Texas. If you want precedence for making a change and forcing Bochy out, there is none, and it's highly unlikely to happen this late in the season. Could it provide a spark that could wake the club up in time to make a run? Also very unlikely, as Bochy and his resume clearly have the respect of every player in that clubhouse, as well as those above him making the call. The most likely scenario is that Bochy will retire at the end of this season. Bochy is in the final year of his deal and is most likely going to fulfill his contract and reevaluate if he wants to continue with the full 162 game grind moving forward, regardless of how the Rangers perform in the second half. With absolutely nothing left to prove in the game, it would make sense that he would hang it up at the conclusion of the season. Still, it puts the organization in a difficult position. Should they continue to hover around the 500 mark and keep the final wildcard spot within reach? The smart money is that Young and the Rangers ride out the season with Bochy at the helm, unless he decides to call it a career before then. But who knows? Bruce may want to get his career record above 500 before he calls it a day. Right now, he is sitting at 2,212 wins and 2,229 losses. Despite his record, it's one hell of a record. And finally, we're going to take a look at 3 reasons the Rangers need to draft a shortstop in 2025. Despite having the 4th best prospect in baseball at shortstop, the Rangers need to go find him a partner up the middle. One of the longest debates in sports is drafting for need versus drafting the best player available. There is no way of knowing the right answer at the time of the draft, but drafting the best player available works more. If the situation is absolutely perfect, a team can get away with drafting for need, or the two magically align. Magically aligned when the Rangers drafted Wyatt Langford, but with a pick in the teens, it doesn't really happen. The situation at hand for Chris Young is deciding who is the best player for the Rangers. The shortstops in the 2025 draft are by far the best players in the draft, and if the 12th pick is used on one, it will be best player available and drafting for need. So, 3 reasons the Rangers should draft a shortstop with the 12th pick. Right off the bat, the crop of shortstops this year is incredible. College and high school prospect classes usually have multiple strengths among a large range. It seems like that has led to left-handed pitching, power hitters, and shortstops. Whether you look at the college or prep level, the names are sensational. They all tend to do different things and project very differently. For instance, Kason Cunningham is a prep shortstop that might stick at short, but is likely an elite-level athletic second baseman, while Merrick Houston is pacing to follow in Zach Neto's footsteps and be major league ready fast. Young's tendency goes towards college, but this is the time to go for a developmental project, as there is no rush with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, signed long-term, but Father Time will catch up eventually. Walcott will not stick at shortstop. You can't think that a player will stay at one position just because they develop as one. There are an endless amount of shortstops that are tall with a rocket arm that end up not sticking at short. The Rangers need to take a long, hard look at Josh Young and seriously consider if he is part of the future. Third base is absolutely a need if Young is either going to underperform or be hurt all the time. Young's value is there. If a trade situation arises, but Walcott has already begun playing some at third in the minors, it would be naive to act like the future is certain. Preparing Walcott at third and right field is likely the plan moving forward if Young is traded and the rumors are starting to fly. Where there is smoke with rumors, there is fire. Ultimately, the question is if Young's last game in Ranger uniform will be in 2025 or not. The future is unclear, and Walcott is the clear choice long-term to replace him, if the answer is yes. And number 3 reason, shortstops can play anywhere. Drafting a shortstop more often than not is like recruiting an athlete in a college football dynasty. They have tools that lean them towards certain positions, but you have the option to develop them as whatever you choose. San Diego is the biggest proponent of why this is such an effective practice. Whether it is Fernando Tatis or Jackson Merrill, they show that a shortstop with the right tools can play anywhere. If the guy you pick doesn't defensively stick at shortstop, move them to a less athletically based position, and they likely will be elite there. The Rangers farm is lacking elite athletes and elite hitting prospects severely, and this draft has so many that can solve that problem. The industry is leaning this way because of a need, but the story goes so much deeper. The Rangers have a clear lack of good hitting prospects, and that has to be addressed somewhere. The shortstops in this class are too good not to take. Taking a college bat or other Risk is not worth it when the shortstops are so good. So let me know your thoughts on the topics we've covered in the comment section below. Let's keep this conversation going. Let me know the direction you think the Rangers will be going, either post draft or in the next season. And of course, do you think Bochy's going to hang it up, or do you think he'll continue another probably year or two? I'd give him one more year in Texas and then probably retire. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TT Rangers, or just scan the QR code right there or up there. And with that, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.